Good evening, everybody, and welcome Tuesday night Autumn Ascent Weekly number 25. I'm going to get right into it tonight and get my screen share up. And here we go. I am hoping that everybody can see my screen just fine. And welcome. It is March 9th, 2021. And we are on week 25 of Autumn Ascent Weekly. So this week's agenda, we're going to do a little review of last week as usual. And then we're going to go over with this week's theme, which is attitude. And then we're going to talk about the action of the week and what we've got coming up. So as you may note, we were going to have a guest speaker this week. Unfortunately, I am sad to say her mom passed away and was ill, and we want to send her as much love and care as we can. And so that is for Shante and her mom. And for that, for this week, we are going to get started with a little bit of humor to brighten things up. And so here we go. We have our battery. I just try to focus on the positive side of things. Agnik, I'd like to talk to you about your attitude, because he's got that I'd rather be in Miami. And then last but not least, dude, have you found the cheese yet? If you remember back a while back, we talked about the book, Who Moved My Cheese? And I just found this one extremely humorous. I cracked up laughing when I saw it. Hopefully you got a chuckle out of it too. Last but not least, a butterfly is a caterpillar with a positive attitude. That's for what's coming up right now. So let's go into last week's review. Last week was all about education and learning. So the question is, did you learn anything? Maybe you read a good book, maybe you read a new book, or maybe you learned a sport or a new exercise. Maybe you learned a new hobby. Maybe it was just something random, a piece of trivia or something that you learned during the day. Maybe you learned something new from some new webinar on the internet. Maybe you attended some kind of a program and you learned something new there. Or maybe it was a game. You know, we have kids down here playing a video game, and that's learning something new as well. I mean, learning something doesn't mean that it has to be something that you're learning to really just use for work or something. You can learn something for fun. So even learning a new game is educational learning. So hopefully you were able to learn something last week and apply that to your ongoing knowledge as a lifelong learner. So now we're going to get right into attitude. And we want to talk about what is attitude. So attitude is a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something, typically one that is reflected in a person's behavior. At least that's the way the Oxford Dictionary says it is. In psychology, an attitude refers to a set of emotions, beliefs, and behaviors toward a particular object, person, thing, or event. So it's kind of the same, but maybe sounds a little bit better that way. And attitudes are often a result of some kind of experience or upbringing, and they can have a powerful influence over our behavior. And, one's attitude reflects how you think and how you feel and how you behave in any given situation. We've talked in the past about that E plus R equals O. So there's an event, and then there's your response, and then there's the outcome. Now, today, I happen to have a very busy day as I work my local elections here in the town that I live in. And I went in with a very positive attitude this morning. And my goal was to maintain that positive attitude throughout the day. Now, it was a town election, and town elections are generally not that busy. So during the day, we had a lot of downtime and boring time, but I chose my attitude instead of, like a couple people were, going, oh my God, is this day ever going to get over? Instead, I kept myself engaged. I had my computer with me, I had a book with me, I had my cell phone so I could, read stuff and look up things and watch little clips of videos and stuff like that. So I was learning all day long today. My attitude was an attitude of positivity so that I could just keep feeling good all day long. I chose to feel good and have a good attitude. So that, attitude is, it's a way of thinking. Like they say, a way of thinking or feeling. But, you choose your attitude. You always get to choose how you feel. Now, there's actually 3 types of attitude, and we're going to go through each one of them in some detail. The first one is a positive attitude. Now, individuals who have positive attitudes, they pay attention to the good rather than the bad in people and situations and events and that kind of thing. So like me today, I chose to have a good positive attitude. Now, we're the type of people when we have those positive attitudes that we don't consider a mistake or a failure as something bad. We consider it an opportunity. We talked about that before. We don't have problems, we have opportunities. And we also learn from our mistakes and take those lessons to move forward in life. So if something does happen, we take the lesson out of it and we move ahead. That's somebody with a positive attitude will do that. Now, there's some traits of positive attitude people that include confidence, optimism, happiness, sincerity. We've got sense of responsibility, flexibility, determination, reliability, tolerance, the willingness to adapt, humility, and diligence. Those are all traits of a person with a positive attitude. Now, sometimes, they aren't always so easy to maintain. And sometimes we have that type number 2, and we have a negative attitude. Now, people with a negative attitude, I'm going to just put this right out there that when you have a positive attitude, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are positive 100% of the time. We get it. We all have our bad days. We all have our bad periods. We have our bad weeks. Stuff happens. But you still get to choose what your attitude is. If you choose to be positive, you'll be positive. If you are negative, then you choose to be negative. So that's entirely up to you how you choose to feel. And so people with negative attitudes, they ignore the good and they just pay attention to the bad that's in the people or the situation or the event. And, they let things get to them and they like to complain and blame. We've talked about that when we talked about the 100% responsibility and the E+R=O before as well. Take that 100% responsibility. You have to give up blaming and complaining. And negative people, that's all they like to do is blame and complain. Now, again, I get it. We're human. Permission to be human. We all have things every now and then that we have to complain about. Or, I generally try not to complain or blame. And if I do find myself blaming something or someone for something that's going on, I catch myself really quick and go, wait a minute, what did I do to create that? But a negative person, that's all they do is they just blame and complain, and everything is all about blaming and complaining. And so some traits with people with negative attitudes include anger and hatred, pessimism, frustration, doubt, resentment, jealousy, inferiority. So obviously negative is not necessarily a good thing. It's all that bad stuff. And remember, when you have a positive attitude, you're raising your vibration up to a higher level. And when you have a negative, you're way down. And keeping yourself in a negative vibration or positive vibration, either way, you attract more of what that is. So I don't know if you've ever met one of those people that is just 100% of the time, they are just the most negative person you have ever met in your life. Now, a lot of people who choose to be positive all the time very quickly remove those people from their lives. They just start phasing them out. And that can be really hard when it's a family member or something like that. Some people are totally estranged from family because of stuff like that. But other people, it's, see them on Christmas and Thanksgiving or, some holiday or birthday or special occasion or something, but outside of that, they keep their distance because they don't want to deal with that negativity. And when they do have to meet with them or see them, and they know that they're walking into the negativity, they have their guard up, and, they keep their positive going and just, keep their shield up. Don't let the negativity in, because those negative vibes are really, really strong vibes. So when somebody's got that negative vibration going on and you got the positive vibration going on, yeah, you're in this positive state, but it's like somebody like just poking at you, poking at you, poking at you with those negative vibes. And, that can really bring you down. It can start like, chipping away at you. So you have to be really conscious. And that's why a lot of people, when they have those negative people in their life, they just choose to keep them at a distance. And then that way it just keeps them, in their positive state. So there's one more type of attitude though that we have. And that is the neutral. I love this cat. This cat is sitting here like, yeah, what do you want? But what can I do for you? Just the neutral. Doesn't give a care. Is just hanging out. So that neutral people, they just don't, they don't give importance to anything, to situations or events. They just they ignore problems. They leave them for somebody else to take care of. They don't feel the need to change or do anything different, couch potato cat here. So, some traits of people with neutral attitudes are complacence and indifference or detachment, feeling of being disconnected. That's another trait of a neutral attitude. And unemotional. Have you ever met one of those people that it's like, it doesn't matter, what you're doing, if you're laughing your head off and they just don't do anything, you're screaming and yelling, they don't do anything, they just don't react. It's almost like robotic to me, but it's like I feel feelings with people. So if somebody's positive, somebody's negative, I can tell, what I'm catching off of them. If you're neutral, there's just nothing. And I mean, I guess the good part of that is that nothing ever bothers them. They're not happy, they're not sad, they're just neutral. So I guess all things considered, if I have a choice between negative and neutral, I'm going neutral. At least with the neutral, I know I'm not, negative and really vibrating low. I'm a little bit further up and, I'm on the cusp of positive, so I can raise my vibration and keep going up. So I want to talk a little bit about Viktor Frankel. Now, this is a quote that it's one of my favorite quotes. So everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Now, Viktor Frankel was a very famous author. He was very famous in psychology. And in 1921, when he was 15 years old, he did his first lecture, and the title of the lecture was On the Meaning of Life. Now, Viktor Frankl was a Jew. And when you think back into the 1940s and World War II, between 1942 and 1945, Viktor was in concentration camps. And before they were put into a concentration camp, there's some things that Viktor had to live with. And speaking about attitude and what you have to deal with. So his wife was forced to abort their baby, and she died in a concentration camp. His family, his father, mother, and brother all died in camps. And he had one sister who escaped to Austria. Now, Viktor Frankl chose his attitude when he was in the concentration camp. What he noticed was the people who had hope actually survived. It was the people who chose an attitude of despair, and they're in this camp, and it's really easy. I mean, I can't even begin to fathom what it was like in a concentration camp with people dying all around you, no food, skinny, they're making you work. I can't even begin to imagine how that was. And he lived through it, and he went in with this knowledge. Like I said, when he was 15, he did his first lecture on the meaning of life. And so he went in with this knowledge and he looked around him and he began to realize that it was those people who, I wouldn't say they chose a positive attitude, but they chose not to give up. So their attitude was one of, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to survive. I have hope. And they did. So it was amazing how many people actually survived the concentration camps just because they had that hope. And so he went on to do many things. He actually died in 1997, so he lived to a ripe old age. And the last book he ever published was called Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning. And he was absolutely an amazing man. I have read one of his books in the past. And if you ever get a chance, check out Viktor Frankel's story, because if you're ever down and at that point where you go, I'm just done, I can't deal with this anymore, you read his story and you'll be like, okay, he can do that. I can do anything, because we have nothing like he had to live through. And he chose that attitude, that positive attitude, that attitude of hope. And because of it, it saved his life. I mean, that was how he survived the concentration camp. So does anybody have any questions? I see we have a few people on right now. I don't have too much more on attitude. So I do want to share a story for today, because we're talking about attitude. And I mentioned that I chose my positive attitude today. And at the end of the night, when I was leaving the polling place, the town moderator came in, and he was actually kind of funny because he knew that I was leaving to come and be with you all here and do the webinar. And he asked me, he said, what's your topic tonight? And I said, the topic's attitude. And he goes, so you had a good attitude all day, right? And I said, absolutely. And it was funny because as I was looking around the room and thinking about tonight's presentation, I saw all kinds of different attitudes. I literally people watched most of my day. And there was some workers that I had at the poll. They all report to me when I'm there. And there was some of them that I would call them more of a neutral attitude today. They really didn't choose to be happy. They didn't choose to be sad. It was really a boring day. I'm going to tell you, we had like 300 people come in and vote. That was the lowest that we've had, I think, since I've ever been doing the elections here in town. I think last year was 706 or something for the town election. And we had just under 300 come in today. It was not only really boring, but it was really kind of sad, with speaking of attitudes that people are picking for what they're doing these days. And so as I was looking around the room all day long, and Chris, the town moderator, had asked me that question, I was thinking about it. And I said, it always amazes me how some people are. There's people who came in with kids after school, and some of them were, hey, it's a beautiful day. It's gorgeous out. It's warm. We're gonna go vote, and then we're gonna go play, and then we're gonna have dinner. And we're gonna do the stuff. And you can see they were so happy. And then there was other ones who came in that literally were dragging their kids, and they're dragging their kids along to bring them in. And I'm like, wow, it's like these poor kids are gonna have a rough night tonight because mom and dad, they just weren't happy. But they chose that attitude. And Steve G just put in, it's our choice. We get to pick our attitude. That is the one choice you always have, no matter what the situation is. You may not have a whole bunch of choices for anything else that's going around physically, but you can always, always, always choose your attitude. So some of the people that I saw today were absolutely incredible. I witnessed all three types today: the positive, the negative, and the neutral. There were some people who came in without a care. There was one guy who came in who was kind of upset, and it was actually kind of strange. And we did chuckle a little bit when he left, because what he was mad about was, nobody told me there was an election today. And we were kind of all taken aback for a second going, well, where you been? Where have you been? Because everybody else knew there was an election today, and I'm not quite sure what you're looking at reading or whatever. But it's kind of known that the second Tuesday in March, if you live in Salem, is election day, and it's basically posted everywhere. But he was really mad, and he had a couple kids with him, and he just wanted to know. He was like, why aren't my kids in school today? Is this why they're not in school? Nobody told me there was going to be an election. He chose that attitude. He could have said, oh, wow, I didn't know there was an election. Wow, cool. I better go vote before the day's over. He could have chosen that attitude, but he literally yelled at one of the workers, and I had to kind of walk over and say something, and he left. He was fine. I mean, he kind of stormed out with his kids, but he definitely chose that. I'm going to be negative, and I don't care what you say to me. Because I told him, I said, where do you normally vote? I mean, if you vote in this district and you want to vote today, just, why don't you just vote while you're here? And he just didn't want to hear it. Now, other people came in, just kind of literally, when I talked about the neutral and said, it's kind of robot-y, they don't care either way. They don't care good. They don't care bad. They just kind of exist. And there was literally some people who just came in, they walked in, they gave their information, they got their back over, they finished the ballot, they walked out, whole time, no smile, no reaction, nothing. They just were there. And then there were the people who, and I'm happy to say that there was more people on the positive side than anything that came in, and they were like, oh, wow, thank you guys for being here. Yeah, this must be really boring today. And they were chatting with us and asking if they could help us with anything. And, it's like, oh, well, what are you doing? And, I got, COVID time, but I did actually get a few hugs today. And so they came in all happy, all cheery. Some of these people I don't see until election day, but I see them every election. And so they're, oh, we're all catching up. We're talking about our pets and, what we've been doing for the past year and where we've been going. And it was all happy and it was all good. So there was a lot of us who chose to have that good, upbeat attitude all day long. I had a couple of people, none of my people who were working with me today were negative. I had a couple who were neutral, and they just kind of sat at the table doing their thing and went about doing the job, which they did excellent, but kind of didn't engage either way with the good or the bad. So the key point here is, just like Viktor Frankel, is that you always get to choose your attitude. Now I know Steve G's on here, so I know he's gonna know this one, but there is a quote that comes out of a song from one of my favorite bands, and the band is called Rush. And the line in the song goes, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And how true is that? You get to choose. And even if you don't want to choose, that was still a choice. You chose not to make a decision. You chose not to decide to have a good attitude. You chose to be negative. You chose whatever it was that was going on. Remember, it is always, always, always your choice. And as we talk about 100% responsibility and the E plus R equals O, and we've talked about this in the past, all of that centers around your attitude, because it's all you. You are the creator of everything in your life. If you don't like what's going on, then it's your choice to make a change. You always have that choice. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, yes, yes, free will. That's the name of the song. Yes. And Steve O was on. He said he got kicked for a second. So, okay, so he's back. So this week we do have some actions, and the actions of the week is to check your attitude and pay attention to it, just like I did today. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? If it's positive, are you confident? You're happy? You're feeling strong? You're outgoing? Or maybe you're negative. Maybe you're having a bad week and you're riddled with anxiety and nerves, and you're angry or frustrated, or whatever that is. Or you're neutral and you basically don't care what's going on. You're just here. You're just like the cat that was on the couch, just hanging out, doing nothing. And that's all you care about. And so what is your attitude? Now, when I said check in on your attitude, what I mean by that is really pay attention, because a lot of times we wake up and we have some mood that we're in, and that mood tends to stick with us throughout the day. And we don't really think twice about it. So if we wake up in a quote unquote bad mood, we wake up going, oh, such a bad mood. Oh my God. Is it Tuesday again? Oh, man, I hate Tuesday. Tuesday's like the worst day of the week. It's like way at the beginning of the week. It's almost like worse than Monday. And even though it's a day close to the weekend, it's like the worst day of the week because there's still 3 days left. I mean, you can spin it however you want, but that is your choice to spin it that way. Or you could say, all right, another Tuesday. This is awesome. What am I going to accomplish today? I'm so excited for whatever today is going to bring for me. Every morning before I set a foot out of bed, I do 2 things. I write in my gratitude journal and I set my intentions for the day. I go through, I know I have my calendar. I know I have my calendar of things to get done, and there's always a lot of things, and sometimes there's overlapping things. So I know straight out that I'm not going to get them all done. But I set my intentions for what is most important to me and what I plan to accomplish. But I always throw in that little as long as everything's working okay throughout the day, because best laid plans, everything's going to be good. I've got this at 9 o'clock. I got this at 11 o'clock. I got this at 2 o'clock. I got this at 4 o'clock. And you have things planned throughout the day. Maybe you have meetings all day long during the day. And then, maybe it's something, because most things are done online these days. And then all of a sudden you lose your internet for 4 hours. Now, you get to choose your attitude. So you are on a Zoom call and you're doing in the middle of a podcast with somebody, and all of a sudden your internet drops and you lose them. You kind of sort of probably start to freak out initially because you're trying to get back on. Sorry, frantically trying. And then all of a sudden, you get to choose that attitude of, okay, I can totally be upset about this and freak out, or I can message the person I was working with, using my phone and just say, hey, just lost internet. Sorry about the disconnect. Can we do this at another time? And just run with the situation. Again, it's the event plus your response equals the outcome. And if your outcome is negative attitude, then maybe you want to change your response up. So check in on that attitude and pay attention to, do you have days during the week where one day you're up, one day you're down, one day you're neutral, one day you're up, and you're down, and you're neutral? Are you like flip-flopping all over the place? Because if you are, that usually means that something's unbalanced someplace else. And maybe just by recognizing that your attitude's all over the place and all those feelings are all over the place, that could be your check-in. Those are your signs saying, hey, you know what? Maybe you need a break. Maybe you need a vacation. Maybe you need a couple of days off, technology free. Maybe you're just at a point in your life where you're like, okay, I've been going, and you just need to stop. So your attitude and how you feel really helps you with that knowledge of how you're feeling and where your mindset is at. So it's always a good thing. So remember, it is always your choice. It's your attitude. You own it. You're the pilot. You're in control. Make sure you keep a positive attitude. Does anybody have any questions or comments? If not, we will move along. We have an upcoming schedule. On March 16th, we're going to talk about success. And then we're going to talk about change. And then we're going to talk about overcoming fear, and then self-worth and money going into April. So with that, if there are no questions, I say thank you for being here. Excuse me, I have a tickle. And I hope you all have a good night, a good week, and excuse me. I will see you soon. Have a good night.